You're listening to the Digital Deep Dive, where we tackle the newest trends, strategies, and pain points shaping growth across the digital landscape. From Amazon and D2C to international expansion, join our host and e-commerce leaders across multiple industries for in-depth discussions on how to maximize your brands in the digital arena. Now, here's your host, Aaron Conant.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Digital Deep Dive podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Conant, and today we are going to jump into basically Amazon Vendor Central accounting shakeup. There's been some massive changes, I guess, that have taken place. I just had a conversation. We're recording this on a Monday, but on Friday, Hannah reached out. Longtime friend was like, "We have to chat on all the changes that are happening." And I was like, "Okay." The stuff was crazy. I'm like, we have to put on the podcast for everybody to hear. And so I think there's going to be a lot of things we cover in here when you think about, chargebacks, overbilling, shortages, claims, all that fun stuff. It's really over the past, I would say, couple years, brands have realized how much revenue is lost to Amazon in these areas. And as they went to reclaim those dollars, it's not as easy as brands had hoped it would be. But then as we started to figure it all out, I think Amazon literally shook up the entire business right now. And so there's things that I think it would be great to walk through so everybody's aware of. But it's not me that's going to walk us through it. I'm going to bring the resident expert on here, Hannah Blackburn from the Hawkers Club. Again, longtime friends, partners, supporters of the BWG Connect network and a ton of brands in it. But Hannah, you want to jump in? If you want to give a brief background on yourself and the Hawkers Club, that would be awesome. And then let's start tackling these one by one, where it was and where it is now. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds great. We started the Hawkers Club it's nearly 7 years ago, but that makes me feel very old. And before that, I was an in-stock manager at Amazon focused on profitability. And the result of all that work was the bulk buy offers that you will see in your Vendor Central today. I can promise you we started off with good intentions, so it wasn't supposed to be like it is today. And then about 3 years ago, we started working on overbilling, age shortages, and then all those other charges Amazon do in your account. One of the most interesting changes that happened when we started working on it was that Amazon reduced the amount of time you had to reclaim from 5 years to 2 years. So we knew that Amazon started to think, okay, what's going on here? Let's get our head around, have we been overcharging brands? And then, we started to get into processes for overbilling. We now work with over 300 clients on their overbilling and their age shortages. And just recently, and this is very much hot off the press, Amazon has changed how those are processed. So this affects brands that are currently working with an agency to do this, but it also affects brands that do it themselves because it's the basis for calculation that's changed.
And we're going to walk through these one by one, right? What you've seen, that would be awesome. Where should we start? What would be the biggest one?
I would say the biggest one's the overbilling change. That's the most significant change. And it's actually the most significant change I've seen on the Amazon platform in the entire time I've worked with Amazon, which is over a decade now.
And so walk us through, what did it used to look like so everybody's level set? And then what are the changes? And then how should people be thinking about handling those? I also want to get into a little bit, maybe at the end, the tech that's out there that's currently in place that helps people solve for this. Are they going to have to do massive changes as well? And let's push that to the end. Let's go one by one. So you said overbilling.
Yeah. So the overbilling is the first one. So overbilling is when you get charged co-op. So this is your marketing, your damages, your freight. Some people will have SVS. Some people will have a guaranteed minimum margin agreement. And then there's some other kind of fun ones. But most people are just going to have the freight, the damages, the marketing. And marketing is sometimes billed as co-op. So up until a month ago, this was always billed on something called distributor shipment. You can see this in the backup reports on Vendor Central. When you look at your co-op, it's column D. And that means that Amazon is charging you those percentages based on the dollar unit paid amount of what they receive. that's interesting because it's not what they physically receive from you. As we all know with shortages, it's what they acknowledge they have received. So if Amazon say they've got a really old shortage from 2021 and then they pay you in 2024, that is when they're saying, yes, we finally received these goods. So that is when they would charge you the co-op on it. And that time scale makes it really hard for brands to manage already. But what it also did is it caused a lot of chaos, which caused Amazon to overcharge. So ways that Amazon overcharge on co-op is they will charge on more units than you ever even accepted and shipped to them. They will, and that's like kind of a lot like double charging. They will charge on POs that they didn't even place with your brand. They will charge freight on direct fulfillment, and they will sometimes charge entire co-op on direct import when, unless you are a very large brand with a very specific deal with Amazon, which really it's the top less than 1%, you should never be charged co-op on direct import. That's completely changed now because Amazon have changed the basis for their calculation from distributor shipment, so when they acknowledge receipt of the goods, to Amazon payables. So they call it, sometimes it says Amazon payables, sometimes it's called expected Amazon payables. It's still in column D of the backup report, but what that means is that they're charging it based on what they have paid out to you. So that's got some really good things and some really bad things. The really good thing is it's better for cash flow in the sense that you will not be charged co-op on things they haven't paid you for. So previously, sometimes they'll call out a shortage, but they'll take the entire co-op. That is supposed to stop happening based on this new calculation. The downside of that, though, is that if you start to see large shortages on your account, a lot of the time when you are looking to collect those, you just see that shortage amount in your mind, and you don't think, actually, that's still X payment terms. So that's still X co-op. So that means that rather than calculating for that full amount, you're going to have to start proactively calculating for the co-op, because it won't be that Amazon's taken it in the past. It will be you get a large shortage repayment, then you get a large co-op claim. So that's the kind of cash flow element of it. The next one is it should lower the overbilling. So it should lower Amazon's mistakes, because a lot of the time Amazon would take the co-op upon receipt, and then ultimately they've already billed you for that co-op when you ship the goods. They're billing you for that co-op when they pay the goods. So it should reduce a lot of the double billing. However, we are seeing still some errors in there. So what Amazon doesn't seem to have got around yet is their smart matching system is still causing them problems where they essentially are over receiving, so they're overtaking on the co-op but not paying for the goods. The next thing it does, though, which is very, very exciting, is for the first time ever, it's allowing us to predict shortages before they even happen. Because in this data, Amazon is saying, we are charging you on what we are going to pay you. But what they caveat that with, it's what we are going to pay you and what we expect to pay you. So it's not that they've paid you and then they're taking the co-op. They say, within the next month, 2 months, we are going to pay you this amount, so we're taking the co-op. What that means is, though, we can then reverse that back and say, okay, so based on the co-op that they're taking, these are where the shortages are. So that is fantastic because it gives us more time to pull together any information we need. It gives us a cash flow heads up. We know when there's going to be provisions for receivables. So it's almost like Amazon has created a secret window into what they're thinking, how they think about the POs you've shipped, which is very exciting. The last thing it should do, which is a positive, is it should reduce audits, because audits are when Amazon say, we should have kind of charged you this co-op based on your net receipts, but we didn't. So we are taking the underbilling. And what they should do is, because it's based on paid, it reduces the overbilling and it reduces the underbilling. So you should see less large audits. If you don't see less large audits, that's a problem. And that is pretty much a sign on your account, like the canary in the coal mine, that something is really up. So I think that's a note for every accounting team. If you do not see co-op related audits reducing in the next 6 to 12 months, then you really need to do a deep dive, and it's a call your VM, get the finance team together type emergency. On the bad side, it's going to be a lot harder to predict your co-op because it's based on when Amazon pay you. So say Amazon pay you something back from 2021, it's hard to predict when they're actually going to pay that amount once it becomes a shortage. So that means that you're going to get co-op bills that you couldn't predict. Right now, most brands will say, okay, we shipped Amazon this amount in March. So we're expecting in April a bill for, say, 21% of that amount. And, it's give or take that. The mistakes Amazon makes on a percentage level are very small. But now, anyone that's had historic shortages problems will start seeing very hard to reconcile co-op because it's based on payables. The next one is that Amazon believe their payables solution has completely fixed everything to do with the system. So rather than them engaging with, okay, you made this mistake, they are turning around and saying, no, don't worry, we fixed it. So it's actually now becoming quite hard to dispute. But I mean, it's still possible. It's just a lot harder. It used to be quite a process by the end where you could say to Amazon, this is my evidence. And then they were so used to receiving the evidence that they could deal with it. But now they think they fixed it. So you have to go through the stage of convincing them there's a problem rather than just having them review your evidence. And then lastly, Amazon has put in a caveat that don't worry, if you find that we've made a mistake, we will fix it in the following month. So that just delays everything because you now have to wait for the following month to see if they've actually fixed it and then dispute it after that if not. So there is a lot of waiting and it's a lot harder to track now if they've actually fixed their problems.
Wow. Yeah, it sounds to me like they're saying, yes, like you're saying, we fixed it. Just wait and see. Just wait and see. Just wait and see. Just trust us. And it's going to be a rough go of it for a lot of brands who are like, you mean, just trust us. Like for the last, 10 years, you've been taking, basically a profit center on these chargebacks, overbillings, whatever it might be, fines. We had to argue to get our money back that you owed us. And now they're like, hey, trust us. We fixed it. I don't know. It sounds like, I don't know. It's going to take a while for people, I think, to feel comfortable with that. That's, I guess.
Yeah, but I mean, I would take comfort in the fact that anyone that's doing their own overbilling disputes right now, they're going to start seeing them automatically rejected. And this should prove that they shouldn't panic. It just means that the basis for calculations changed. So you need to change what you're doing, or your results will cease.
Awesome. Okay. What else has changed?
Okay, the next one is age shortages. So usually the classification for a shortage is when something is overdue by, it's overdue by any amount of time based on the due date you put on the invoice. The caveat to that is, and Amazon in-stock managers have kind of been dropping this to the bigger brands for a while, that unless something is overdue on a 90-day payment base, no matter what your payment terms are, then they're not even really looking for it. They don't see it as overdue. So say a lot of people come to me and their payment days are 60, and then they say, everything is overdue all the time. And I say, yes, well, no matter what your payment terms are, Amazon isn't really truly looking for it until it's past 90 anyway. And then it's got to be, that's when it becomes like on their radar to let's start looking into this. So that's when it's current, essentially, when it's overdue, but overdue by 120 days or less. I know people will be wincing for the cash flow implications of that, but that's just the reality of it. If something's not overdue by more than 120 days, it's still cast as current. You're still very likely to receive it. When things go overdue by more than 120 days, that's when you should start to get nervous. That's when you should start to think, Amazon's very likely not looking for this anymore. They think that I just didn't ship it. And what that currently means is that you can then put it into kind of an aged shortage action. So right now you have to pull your evidence together to prove to Amazon that there is enough doubt that you did ship the goods. So how we do it is we look at where they have over-received on POs as an aggregate, at an ASIN level. So we say over the past 3 years, Amazon as a total have received this amount of ASINs, of one ASIN, and they have paid us for this amount. And we can show to Amazon, this is where you've over received it on the POs. This is where you should look for the product. And then we also say to them when we can that this is your shipped units of this ASIN for an aggregate amount of time. This proves that you've paid us less than that shipped amount. If you didn't get it from us because you didn't pay us, where did you get it? And we use that to create enough doubt to get Amazon to investigate. And then what happens is Amazon will investigate, and then they will come back and they will say, this is what we were able to find. This is what we can pay you. Or they will say, this is what we can't pay you because this is we weren't able to substantiate it. And it's oftentimes a mix of that. Based on that kind of analysis, you would be expecting Amazon to pay about 80% of what you go and present to them, unless there's been a big issue on the account, such as over invoicing Amazon or something like that. But that's how it works right now. The positives of that is you get a big cash lump sum, you get your issues resolved. The negatives is it takes months to complete because you're waiting in a queue of everyone that wants to present their evidence to Amazon. And then also, I've never seen anybody get 100%. The highest I've ever seen someone get was a 97% payback rate, but it just seems like Amazon are allergic to paying back 100%. They won't do it. It becomes a bit of a negotiation. What Amazon have done now is, as their new exciting fix, is instead of being able to do it on bulk tickets, which it's still working on some accounts, but more and more accounts are getting pushback saying you should be using the new process. We're not doing this on bulk anymore. So I'm expecting that to disappear at some point this year and become a hard line. But what it is now is Amazon want you to redispute shortages one by one. That tool essentially says that
really quick, just to recap this, what I'm hearing is you used to be able to aggregate and say, hey, I'm going to give one big one. Yeah, I shipped it. You gave me 50 POs over the past 50 weeks. I shipped in this, but you only paid me this much. Now, again, it's aged 120 days, right? Is what I'm saying, is what I'm hearing. So it's 120 days, then look back 50, you could put them in and say, hey, here's what we shipped you. Here's how little you paid us. The gap there, they go and they find, and they whatever they find, they give you back less than 100%. Out of principle, I like what you said, that maybe they're allergic to the 100% payback, but it could be done in bulk. And now the change is it one by one, PO by PO?
So
that by shipment?
Their tool says that you can do 10 at a time, but based on, and again, we do this on over 300 accounts. If you have any mistakes or any irregularities in any of those 10, they all get rejected. So I'm telling everyone, just treat it as one by one, because there's no point doing the work for 10 for them all to be rejected on bulk because of one. So it is essentially one by one.
Nice, right? I mean, are you using like a tech? Like, have you built a platform for this? Like, how are you handling this one by one for 300 brands?
Yeah, exactly. So what the process is now is you would go into your vendor central, you would go into contact us, you would select your business group, payments, shortages, claims, and then it says create a redispute. What will then happen is you put in your redispute, you can put in any evidence that you want, but I would strongly suggest against that the first time you dispute, because Amazon ignores it. They even say that. They say, yes, this proves that you shipped something to us, but it doesn't prove what you shipped. So even if it's the BOL, even if it's the packing slip, that's what they say. So I wouldn't have you waste your team's time to do that, especially because on most accounts, we're talking about thousands of tickets. Because what you do is you create the redispute. Then what will happen is Amazon will create a dispute ID and dispute management, but it's not possible to track it there. It will always show as if it was automatically rejected. But what simultaneously happens is they create a ticket in the ticket system, which is where you're supposed to track it. So you're now trying to open and close thousands of tickets to, one, keep them open, because Amazon tries to close tickets every 3 to 4 days. So you need your team to keep these open. And then if you successfully keep them open, that is when Amazon will come back and they'll say usually one of 3 things. They will say, great, we have reversed this. That's the best case scenario. Then sometimes they will say, we were not able to substantiate this. Feel free to redispute again, which means that you need to start the process loop again. or they will say this was part of a previous deal. So anything that you've done using the historic process will be automatically excluded from this. So that kind of saves you some time if you do know your deal dates previously, so you don't do work when you couldn't get it back anyway. But that's the three things they will say. So you need to be opening those, keeping them open, tracking them, collecting the ones where Amazon has rejected them, but because of lack of evidence, and then redisputing those. So we did create software that automatically does that just because of the sheer volume. One exciting part, because of the software we created, is that we as a company can now offer current shortages completely free of charge, because we wanted to pass that efficiency onto the brands that we work with. And the second reason we really wanted to pass that on to the brands that we work with is because you cannot redispute a shortage if it was not disputed in the first place. So a lot of brands are finding that they're saying, oh, Amazon paid the vast majority of these and the rest we'll pick up later on tickets. Those brands are in a very dangerous situation, because as soon as the tickets go away, you will not be able to go after age shortages because you haven't disputed them the first time they came around. So it's very important that people either begin doing it themselves or start to pick a solution where they are disputing a shortage the first time around, so that they keep the possibility open to redispute that once it gets aged. Because if you don't do that, your age shortages path completely disappears.
Convenient. I love it. This is super fascinating. Are there other things like what more? Tell me more. That's what I would say. Tell me more.
The only other thing on the is I know people are going to be wondering, right, we're doing all this work, what's our levels of success? So on the current process, you should not settle for less than 80% of what you've submitted, unless there's been over invoicing to Amazon or something erroneous like that. Right now on the redisputes, every round that you submit a redispute, you're expecting a 10 to 20% success rate. And then you need to collect all the ones that were in that 90 to 80% of rejections and then redispute those again. So it's just a lot more volume. Amazon say, great, the brands are in control now. But essentially, my view is that it became too much work for them to work through all of the large aggregated tickets, that they're now making it so that it's harder for you to do it in an aggregate. You need to submit them one by one so that they only review them one by one. But that's essentially age shortages. The other fright that people are going to get this year is that SIOC has now become SIPP, so ship in product packaging. This is not just a name change. And what this is that Amazon have changed the brackets effective Jan 1, 2025. So a lot of people are coming to me now and they're saying our chargebacks have really shot up. When I look into it, it's nearly always because of this. What this means is that it used to be $199 per unit, no matter what the product was. So if it's not SIOC, and it should be $199 per unit. A lot of brands, though, thought, we can't do it cheaper than this. So what we're going to do is we're just going to build that into our margin. But what Amazon have done now is they have changed the unit costs and they have based it on product shipping weight. So some people are winning, actually, and if their product's under £10, it's dropped to $180 per unit. But that's not most people. Most people have started to lose, and it goes in £10 brackets. So 10 to 20 is $240 per unit, 20 to 30 is $320 per unit, and then the largest bracket where most people fall into is 30 to 50, and that is the $440 per unit. So anyone that had the $199 in their calculations, that now needs to be $440, and that essentially changes everything, especially in such a hard year. And a lot of people will say to me, Amazon never announced this. They did in a very small press release back in May 2024. So it's not that you've missed it. It's that if you weren't sitting refreshing Vendor Central back in May 2024, you wouldn't have seen this announcement. You would have only seen it in the numbers as of Jan 1.
Wow. And there's nothing, you're not going to go back and redo your pricing, right? This is all in Vendor Central, right?
Yeah.
So your overall, this has been extremely fascinating. Like, your overall take, like, is this better? Is this a better scenario? Is it, and it's a new unknown, right? I think people, you're just starting to figure this out. So previously it wasn't a great scenario, but people had developed, there's technology, there's processes to work around it that people had gotten comfortable with. And now Amazon has said, would have put an end to that. People are too comfortable. And this is me just talking here. People are now really comfortable and really good at getting their money back. So let's, quote unquote, update the system, and we'll say, hey, it's going to be easier. It's going to be more efficient. We're going to put more guidelines, but we're also going to put more work around brands to do this as a whole. Is this now better? Do you think a year from now, this is better? I know it's all new and everybody's going to figure it out. A year from now, is this better than the current or the previous state?
So I think overbilling, it's a year from now, it's going to be much better. If your accounting team trains up and they learn how to do this, and you start to externally plan for your co-op percentages and plan for them coming out, it's going to be better. You're going to be overbilled less. That's fantastic. The only time that it's going to be worse is for this very small percentage of people that have a true and genuine problem where, vendor codes that they don't own have been included in their co-op. That's going to become almost impossible to resolve because Amazon are so sure that they've fixed any issues that they don't even believe there's an issue when you bring them one. But overall, for 95% of vendors, this is going to be a positive change on overbilling. On shortages, it's going to be a positive change based on what you do. So if, for example, you do not have the bandwidth to do current shortages, or you decide not to do them, it's going to be a negative change because then you will lose your ability to reclaim anything that's aged. So the idea is you need to get your team to start doing it and prioritizing it, or you need to find an alternative solution to do that. Otherwise, it will be a net negative because you're going to essentially be writing off those shortages like people used to a few years ago. About 5 years ago, you just had to write off shortages at times, and then that went away. You'd be going backwards if you don't start addressing it proactively. If you do start addressing it proactively, though, you'll ultimately leave less on the table because you won't have to make deals with Amazon and wonder, have I left that 20% on the table because I accepted their 80% payment offer?
So then when do people call you? You just said you're doing this for like 300 brands. My guess is there's going to be a lot of people, even they might have a current tech provider, which we know a lot of them, they do good. But if everything's up in the air, when do people call you? Like, is this just something you're rolling out as an expanded service for literally anybody?
Yes. So most people would call us essentially when they're struggling to do their shortages and they're struggling to keep up. A lot of people will call us when they've had changes around in the team. They know somebody's, maternity leave, vacation, somebody's just retiring, and they think, how are we going to do our shortages moving forward? That's when people call us. On the overbilling, the people that I think it's most important for now are actually the people that have never done overbilling before. Because what that means is now Amazon's changed the process. At some point, they're going to be rejecting overbilling historical tickets that are based on the old calculation. So right now, you're pretty much seeing that squeeze where your like older overbillings, so 24 months ago, are starting to time out, but you're also losing the ability to do new ones. So anyone that has never done overbilling on their account, this is their opportunity to kind of actually do it before that window closes to recover those funds.
Awesome. I've been picking your brain for a while. Any questions for me? Like, this has been amazing, but I always like to, give the guests an opportunity just because I've been picking your brain for a half hour here.
Yeah, I did have one. Based on the last time I was on the podcast, you kind of said something very interesting about like kind of how tech's going to be changing the e-commerce. I don't know, marketplace. How do you think AI is going to impact us in the next 12 months? Are we going to be looking back and thinking, how could we be so antiquated? Or how fast do you think it's going to ramp up, and where is it going to ramp up first?
Yeah, I think it's 12 months. We're going to look back, and if you don't have the new tech embedded in your system, then the following 12 months will be a rough patch of time. Everybody's looking at profitability, right? Everybody is right now. Obviously, Amazon is. Amazon sees this, my guess, is a profit center, and now it's kind of going away. So they have to change the rules a little bit. But what I'm seeing right now is the tech is changing fast enough. We're going to get to a new baseline and a land of diminishing returns is when we get to the new tech that's popping up. And this is for brands, this is for agencies, this is for, both sides of it, is older tech, the most advanced older tech. And by older, I mean like 2 years old and older, was based on rules based. And you could have it operate really quickly. And so that tech layer, their adaptation to AI and ML is to layer that on top. And I just finished recording a podcast with John Harding. He was the CIO over at Conair for 20 years. And what is the tech stack and what does it look like? So this will pop up on that episode as well. But it was you're putting AI and ML on top of rules and you're training it how to use the rules to get an outcome. And that's fine. It's slower. It's limited by the rules that you have in there, and it's more expensive. And they're going to struggle to grow. And so the newer tech that's popping up is AI and ML at its core, and it's solving for an answer. It's not solving for the best possible rules to use to get an answer. It's going straight for an answer. So, and a lot of that is tying in with the marketing cloud. But you have, like Exnerta out there in what they're doing. And they're growing really fast, but they're also training all their AI ML really, really fast. And so in a few months here, they're just a new classification. You have, I think I sent you a connection over to like a Maxity content and what he's able to do at the content generation at scale for generative AI. For marketplaces. We have stuff like Spencer is doing over at Detail Page to look and analyze detail pages and convert. Like all the Andy Berger at Workflow Labs, these are all new tech. That's probably the number one question that I have is how can we solve for profitability? And we're there. You can finally do it. You can finally do it. And if you're not, you're just going to have too expensive of a business or shop to run to support brand growth. That's it. And the other one is if you're not trying this new tech, I mean, you don't have to try everything, but you have to try a lot of stuff because randomly stuff is going to hit and it's just going to take off. And just the rate of change is too fast. The early mover advantage, it's just crazy now. It's crazy. That window for early mover used to be like a year to a year and a half. And now you got to catch it within the first like 3 to 4 months. So that's how I think tech is rapidly changing. When we're finally there, where AI and ML, we have enough basis to train it all. So it's going to give us great outcomes. We've trained it how to train itself. And it's going to be a fun year. It's going to be a fun year. If you like it, if you like change, which most people in e-commerce, like in digital do, right? I mean, they jumped into this not because they like the status quo of, selling to brick and mortar or advertising in magazines and on, cable TV. They jumped in because they wanted something new. Change excited them. And we're here. It's going to be fun. But awesome. Hannah, this has been amazing. Everybody, Hannah Blackburn from the Hawkers Club. Reach out to her on LinkedIn, look them up online. But if you need anything help in this space, anything on the Amazon front, not just chargebacks, direct import is huge. I know we've done podcasts and webinars on that. Anything related to Amazon, it's worth reaching out to them. But again, Hannah, thanks for the time today. And with that, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Digital Deep Dive. Thanks, everybody, for listening in.